Hello and welcome to this edition of Foodocracy for Her. And this is where I speak to women entrepreneurs in the food and beverage business across India because they're doing some fascinating work. And I thought that I must share these stories with you because it's so inspiring. At least I always end these conversations completely inspired. And today with us, we have Kashmiri Nath, or Kashmiri Ba, as she's fondly known. Ba is short form for Baido, right, Kashmiri?
Yes, yes, yes,
and
you're
and
correct.
and it's like a term of respect given to women. It typically
Endearment.
means
Yes,
respect. Yeah, more endearment actually. Because when I went to Guwahati,
yes.
so I must tell you guys this, that I'm sitting in Mumbai right now, and Kashmiri is in Guwahati, and I think that's a picture of a lotus pond behind you in the painting of this
Yes,
thing. So
yes, yes, yes.
that's lovely. It reminds me of my trip to Kyoto where there was a lotus pond like this. So we would not have thought of these sort of things before the pandemic or before the lockdown of, connecting to the internet and having chats. And a conventional way would be to travel and to go to a studio and shoot. But I think what the lockdown and the pandemic has shown us is to work in newer ways and find new paths. And in a way, that's what Kashmir has been
Absolutely.
doing. Yeah, there's for you has been a lot of
Yes.
breakthroughs.
Oh, yes, a lot has happened. One thought the pandemic would slow down your life, but somehow it has made life a little bit more busy, and you found new ways to keep yourself engaged and be helpful, I think, in a way, useful.
Yes, and I love the smile on your face because that's so encouraging because when in a time like this, with so many pressures out there, whether I mean health to life, finances, and
Oh,
all this.
yes.
I mean, we are all facing the pressure, and I'm sure you are as well. But
All of us in so many ways, but yet we have to be grateful for the blessings that we have, I think, all
I
of us.
know to be able to keep our heads up at a time like this. So
True.
let me tell you about when I'd first met Kashmiri. We'd interacted for a while before that on Instagram through our page. And then she came to Mumbai. I think this was about 3 years back, and
Yes.
yes, and she was doing a festival of Assamese food in association with the Trident BKC in Mumbai, and at that time with the executive chef uh, Ashish Basid, who's now moved to Leela Gurgaon. So of course, Ashish is also a dear friend of mine, and Ashish was doing these very interesting programs with home chefs or consulting chefs, and this is a part of that called Revive. So I
Yes.
was very interested because I'm Bengali. I've grown up in Calcutta. Um, in the time which I spent in Kolkata, I've not really had a chance to interact with anyone from Assam as such. And all one knew about Assam was the Bhupen Hazarika song Ganga, which every time in every social, school social, the girls would dance and we boys would sing to it. And yeah, so it's a pity that we are neighboring states and there's so much of
Yes.
contact. But I also think in the 80s and all, travel was also not that easy between Guwahati and Calcutta. Like the train
Yes.
took more than 48 hours or something
Yes.
like that, and flight was not so easy.
Easy.
So after I came to Mumbai, ironically, I had some experiences of trying Assamese food in Bangalore, for example, where there was a restaurant called Ahomia, which had been set up, Ahomi, and then there is Geetika Saikia, who was one of the earlier home chefs in Mumbai. So she was doing Assamese food, which over time I realized, and she would also say, is more the tribal food
Yes.
of the Bodos and. So then I went to Trident, which is this business five-star hotel, and I met Kashmiri and Ashish. And the food was, in a way, very different from what I've tried. At the same time, as a Bengali, I found certain familiarities with it. And though it
Similarity.
was in a five-star environment, it sort of spoke of home food, and that was the sort of feel which is, so that was our first interaction. We've not met in person since then. In fact, when I went to Guwahati a year later, she was not in town. Well, she's pretty busy with work, but I saw how well regarded she was, and she is in Guwahati among the food circles, and especially the younger folks really look up to her. And here we are chatting again. So
Thank you.
welcome on board, Kashmiri. And from now, you're going to do most of the talking. So
Should be whatever you have and whatever little I have, I will share with you, you know.
yes. So Kashmiri, tell me, when you do these sort of events outside of Assam, like at Trident, and I know you've done many more after that. That was one of your earlier ones. What is the message which you're trying to give through your food, or what is the image of Assam which you're trying to give? Because see, forget Assam, forget the Northeast, even Assam, like outside of the Northeast, one doesn't really know much, and which is sad.
No,
So, what is it
it's
that you're trying
really,
to?
my experience has been I have studied outside Assam. I studied in Bengal. I studied in North Bengal, Darjeeling. So from then
Okay,
on, it's been always, and I have met people from all over. They when they came to view the Northeast, they did not even know that we were seven states, some of them. It was like lumped up in one little place somewhere in the East and not very familiar. And especially people from the North and the West. East meant Bengal and
yes,
Kolkata. Yes. And in fact, I told Ashish when I first spoke to him, and that is how I landed up going to Bombay with my food, was because I said, why is it that rest of the country has a wall and it ends in Bengal, and beyond that, people just view us as some kind of an exotic land, not having much interaction. And the fault perhaps lies with us as well a little bit because we haven't kind of made the effort to take our culture or show our food, nothing so much, and we stayed kind of secular. I mean, in a very, how do I say, self-sufficient in a way. Yes,
no,
Helen?
I had muted myself to avoid the background noise. I think
Okay.
you stayed insular in a way.
Yeah, very
I,
insular we were. And like, if you look at it historically also, when the Britishers came, the first thing that they said was their people, we do not, I mean, this area in the Northeast, they said, they don't need to go step out because we were self-sufficient in every way when it came to resources, and we stayed within ourselves. The roads were good, the infrastructure was good, and we had
go ahead.
yeah. So we have our association more with Southeast Asia. If you see, so the food also is influenced hugely by the way we treat our vegetables or the meat, the cooking techniques. You will find a lot of similarity when it came to Southeast Asia and the food in the Northeast. A, because we had Ahom rulers at one point. We were ruled for 500 years. We've had Man Akraman, what we call is the Burmese attack, which was supposed to be the darkest days in the Northeast, but yet they leave some kind of influence when somebody invades you, and there is always some kind of a fallback after that. So we've had more what was similarity with the food and the culture when it came to Southeast Asia than with the rest of the country. So obviously we were always viewed as somebody very exotic, somebody different, somebody who did not share many similarity with the rest of the country. And that is when I thought the best way to debunk all these myths was through food. I traveled a lot again with my daughter when she was playing. She was playing tennis, and so I'll just tell you an incident. She was playing in Delhi. I was sitting, and a lady, she tells me, "Oh, you've come all the way from Assam." So she had that long thing from Assam. I said, "Yes, it's just 2.5 hours flight." She's like, "Oh, is that close?" I said, "Yeah." She thought I was very close to Thailand. I said, "No, I'm part of." So that is when I thought the best part. And people viewed our food as something very different. Yes, every state for that matter has cuisine which is very close to nature. And from there, it keeps evolving and changing and it gets influenced by your travels, as you move out and people come in. So it's a confluence. Even ours, we have a huge business community. The Marwaris are here from
Yes.
other. We have the Jharkhand, people from Jharkhand, they were there. Then, of course, there's a large Bengali community. So it's again become obviously a Ulua Kwa, what you call it, the pagan food, or, very rustic. That is very close to nature. But otherwise, it's become a yet we carry our own style, the way we eat and the way we treat our meat, less spices, less oil, very, how would I say, simple flavors. You are familiar with it, you kind
Yes,
of know
yes,
about it.
yes.
And this place is one of the biggest biodiverse hotspot, diversity hotspot, so we have abundance of greens and vegetables, Brahmaputra and its tributaries, lots of fish. So food was like, very healthy, and we didn't kind of add too many spices to enhance the taste, because it was fresh food every day. Literally, you could just fish in the ponds. Everybody had a pond at home. Chicken was not eaten, like I said. That's again a new thing. So we used to eat a lot of birds. I remember when I was young, my
Sorry, sorry, you missed that. What was not eaten earlier?
chicken. So we
Chicken.
used to
Yes,
eat a lot of
same here.
duck. Yes, a lot of ducks, and fish, of course, featured very largely in our diet, because rivers were, we are a place where rice and paddy fields were there, rice was grown, so rice and fish formed our staple meal, and greens, of course, so, and one didn't, because it was so fresh, either one ate them raw or one just steamed them with a little bit of mustard oil, because that was the, I, as a child, I still recall that I went actually to we used to call it tel pera, where they take out with this cold press oil. The bullocks would
Yes,
go round
yes,
and
yes,
round.
yes, yes, yes,
Yes, mustard
yes,
oil. So I have some faint memories, because my grandfather had a huge thing in the village, so we had all this access to everything. So I did see, and then there was abundance of food, whether it came to your milk, dairy, and dairy featured only in the form of yogurt, and it wasn't used in cooking per se. So there was, dahi was always eaten like jolpan, what we call the lighter meals, and
yes.
yes, and pitas. We didn't even use, because we didn't grow wheat. So any wheat flour or maida or any byproducts didn't feature or don't feature even now on in the Assamese cuisine per se, because it's all rice based. So we use a lot of pitaguri, which is rice flour, to make all our pitas are made with pitaguri. A lot of sesame seed is grown here in the winter months. It's going to start coming in
Yes.
beautiful sesame seeds. We use matima, which is your urad dal, but we call it
Okay.
matima. So I remember from the
Is this the
field.
black? Is this the black udar? Yeah, because
Yes,
I
the
had that
black urad.
in Manas. When the
Yes,
was cooked.
and
Yes,
it has a very creamy texture, because, and
yes,
especially in winters. I still look forward to going to the village till my grandfather was alive, and I must have been around 4 or 5 years. After that, we literally didn't go. And we had this huge cart full of bullock carts would come in, bringing in, guess what? These urad dal pods, and we would just peel it
wow.
open. Yes, we would peel it open and we would eat them fresh. And then they would be sun dried and kept it in the, big, these bamboo baskets they would
Wow.
make. And inside would be also, they would put a thing of earthen, like mati lipa that we call,
Martin. Yes.
the baskets, so that that is how it would be stored. The grains would be
Wow.
stored. Yeah. So I remember seeing all this. So that is when I thought our food needs to go out, because there is so much of beauty and there is so much of flavor and there is so much of myth surrounding the Northeast, So
Yes.
I think we've achieved somewhat, because I find people warming up. I have people who are very curious to know more about it. I know people who have come traveling to see the Northeast, and they go back
Yes.
so uh, enamored,
Yes. Yes.
because there is still simplicity in these parts of the country, and there is, how would I say, still a little charm which we are
Yes.
losing slowly, and I hope we can keep somewhat, along with progress, maintain these old traditions. So I have taken the sticky rice. We cook Bamboo is
Yes.
used, the utensils are made out of bamboo to cook. So a lot of meat is cooked in bamboo hollows. Rice is cooked, sticky rice is cooked. So, and the flavor that it imparts when you cook food in bamboo, it imparts a very different flavor, very distinct, very sweet. It has a beautiful aroma. So all that is, and then now as I'm doing the research, I'm also finding that bamboo and all are so healthy. They are cheap form of protein. One doesn't realize why they ate bamboo shoots and all. Now you realize they're cheap form of protein. And I think people, they did not know the science behind it, but they just ate, what nature gave them. Seasonally they would eat and consume and keep themselves healthy. And there would be some accidents. You would always hear, they would eat mushrooms, especially when I stayed in the tea estates. And we would
Yeah.
always hear every monsoons, you would hear somebody passed away because they would call it chattu or something like that. They ate those
Yeah.
mushrooms.
The wild mushrooms.
So
Yeah.
yes. So I also
And
learned, I would ask my cook, how do you know whether the mushroom is edible or not? Because they go foraging in the village. So he would say, cook it with brinjal. He said, you fry with the
okay.
eggplant. If the eggplant doesn't turn purple or black, it's not poisonous, it's edible.
Wow.
So,
So
so you learn a lot.
so next time I'm going to cook with mushrooms somewhere. Before I make my omelette, I'm going to go to cook it with brinjal.
Oh, no, you don't forage, Kailash. You
I
pick it
don't
up
for
from
it.
the
Yeah,
supermarkets.
I didn't even know, or the local, thela wala downstairs, the cart. So
Yes,
I didn't even know that tur dal had pods because you opened it from pods as a child. I
yes,
opened it from
yes,
plastic bags. So
yes.
did you know by any chance? I mean, I discovered it when I went to Jamshedpur last year for the tribal conference. That even in Kerala they cook in bamboo. In the tribes they cook in bamboo in Kerala as well. So it's often the shared learning coming up in different parts of the country.
Yes,
Kerala in the
yeah.
south, Assam in
It's
the
just a
east.
yes, it's just an ingenious way of putting to use what nature had before, uh, you know, technology or industrialization took place and people started using metal and things. So they would cook in bamboo hollows, in banana leaf, steaming.
Yes,
I need to tell you this, that in winters, what they would take is a lot of fresh potatoes and all would be harvested, and
yes,
onions. So we would all sit in the central courtyard kind of a thing with a fire in the middle, so you waited for the food to be ready while the men folk and the kids would sit around the fire and chat. And it's like an under the starry sky, very
skies.
thick, and you would hear the jackals behind you somewhere. And then later you would take these new potatoes, and after the fire was put out, they would just sprinkle water. The embers would still be warm, right, the ashes, so they would put
Yeah,
those potatoes inside it, and next morning they fish it out, and then they would eat it with their rice, leftover rice. So I mean, how they adapted or how they made their life easy for themselves, it's very interesting when you look back, and you thought these were very natural way to do work, however, to make your life easier.
hmm.
So, and now we look for that smoky flavored potatoes. I try it in the microwave, I will try it in the oven, I will try all, but you still, one cannot ever create those flavors what you tasted.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, Kashmiri, I took one thing out from what you were saying towards the beginning, and I must admit that we Bengalis also perhaps because Calcutta was earlier the capital, and also because of the way we attitudinally are, I think Bengal and Calcutta tended to dominate the East. So before I got into food writing, I used to be in market research. So whenever we would look at samples for East India, it would be Calcutta. Like in north, south, even west, there were multiple cities one would look in. But east, Calcutta, and that was the end of it. And the northeast almost remained like a foreign country, unknown, and
yeah.
within that Assam. But I like the fact that people might have taken this negatively and almost got a persecution complex and justifiable, and withdrawn into a shell, or said that, okay, we are self-sufficient, we don't need you guys. But you said, no worries, if this is what you think, I'm going to go out and through my cooking debunk your myths. And I thought that that's a fascinating attitude, because I often see that in food writing, in the food world, that people are often, and in life in general, are sort of pointing out faults in what others are doing, and often rightfully, or saying this is not happening, that is not happening. But your attitude of, okay, this hasn't happened, so let me go and make it happen, is something I really liked.
Yeah, but then, Kalyan, if you look at it politically, also we have had a lot of issues when it comes to the Northeast, because we have felt for some reason a little slighted from the rest of the country. You felt always not included, but rather excluded in every way. So we have the whole Andolan that took place, I mean,
Yeah.
in the 80s. I am a child, I grew up at that age, and I've seen it didn't do us good. It, in fact, I mean, it was a regressive thing in that it set us back. There was no progress happening in those
Yes.
years. We missed school, we left, you know, the ones who were looking for youngsters left the state. So you had a lot of people moving out of the state, going out and settling. So development didn't happen. Then you realize that these negative things do not take you forward. It really is not. I actually have suffered and seen how people have lost a lot during that period. So, politics has played its part in this part of the country. And what you said is true,
I,
and education, my grandparents, all my previous my uncles and it, where did they study? They all went to Bengal to study. They're all from Presidency College. They went to Dhaka University. They moved out and then they came back. And obviously, when you go out at a young stage and you come back, you are influenced. You bring back your taste. And what is the
yes.
easiest way to remember your happy days? Is through food, isn't it? That's what you recreate.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, I'm presidency too. I'm presidency college too, and well, I also probably grew up in the same time, because we read about the unrest in Assam and the Rajiv Gandhi Accords and all that. We were, of course,
Yes.
very young, but I grew up in Calcutta in the 80s and 90s, where it was also pretty regressive politically, and a lot of us had to move out of the city in search of. So me, my brother, we all live outside. But I like your attitude that, okay, instead of getting sort of trapped in that, I'm going to take out. So now tell me, since this is also an entrepreneurship, in food, you first started from my understanding, as a consultant curator, working with hotels and so on, and then slowly towards your own enterprise. Now, at which stage in life did you professionally get into food? Like, is this a more
Um,
recent thing, or have you always?
yes. No, I used to bake because I have always been a baker. I have this whole thing about baking. I love it. So that's like, so people would keep telling, so
Sorry,
occasionally,
a lot of tea estate girls love baking, right? Because I know
I guess so.
the tea estate girls who've grown up there. There's this ritual of the 4 o'clock family coming
Tea
together, and
time. Yes.
yes, and the tea cakes, and so.
Yes. Yes. So that happened, like you said. So I would do cakes, and then of course when it came last couple of years, I've been traveling a lot outside with my food. So it left no time for actually sitting down and taking orders or getting into this in it. But during the pandemic time, I would just cook and keep putting up, because that is how I kept myself, instead of feeling sad and lonely or something, I started cooking a lot. Started
I think you,
my blog.
I think you once wrote about that either on your Facebook page or Instagram page soon after the lockdown started, about how the reason why you're cooking is just to sort of keep your spirits up, if I remember
Yes,
right.
yes. And then, you would be surprised. I would receive a lot of messages people would want, and they would try my recipes. They would love it, and it carried on. And I put a lot of effort on my blog, which was kind of neglected for a while, for quite some time. In fact, I set up a blog, but I didn't. Then I started, and then, but then, I would receive call from people saying, "Can we have some of that what you cooked, can you just send it to us? We would love to order. So very reluctantly, one person, two-person, it started. And then before I realized I was actually doing it, then I said, no, this is not going to work out like this. I need to make a menu, put it up so that people, it's easier for people as well for me, It's
Yeah.
like I suddenly thought I need to maintain an inventory. And for that, it is better if I have a menu. So it's easy for me to fall back on. And then I found out that it's become popular. In fact, you would be
It
surprised.
is.
A lot of people who are living outside, children who are living outside, and parents are here in Guwahati would call me up and they say, "Can you send a meal for them? We want to surprise them." And it's been 7 months or 6 months. They haven't eaten food outside. And you wouldn't believe, Kalyan, it was more the joy that I got that I was being able to get joy into someone's home through this small act of mine. I said, no, I need to be more. So I would say yes. And, at home, they would say, why do you do breakfast? Wake up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I said, no, it doesn't matter. It just made someone else happy, and I received a lot of, I think, goodwill and blessings through that. So this has become
Uh,
like a more regular event.
yeah. So if I can add to that, I mean, I am one of those people who live away from their mother, grandmother, family, and my brothers in Delhi. So there have been times from the beginning of the lockdown when one ordered food, especially for mom and grandmom, and then now even for brother and stuff. And you feel so good, when
Yes,
the food reaches them. Of course, my granny keeps firing me. Why are you spending so much money and this that? You know how grandmoms are. But
yes.
that the joy of just being able to get some food when there's nothing else you can do. I mean, you're
Yes,
away, you can't be there to help them, and this plate of food brings so much joy and goodwill, like you said.
and happiness, that person is so happy that day. So I found myself that this was my way. In a way, it also made me feel kind of uh, how would I say, humbled. At the same time, I was like thinking I was being able to do something. I'm not a doctor. There were a lot of people who
Yes.
were volunteering. This was my way of taking forward, or the kindness that I have received, to take it back or give it back to somebody. I've had people whose moms are living alone here and the children are abroad, and then they don't know. And then this lady, she calls me and she says, I haven't eaten. And then they are worried about ordering food from outside,
Yeah.
because when they
Yes.
know
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
going from a home, they are doubly ensured that it'll be safe and it'll be cooked by you, and perhaps an in-house staff. There is not much interaction with outside. So
Resuming it. Yes. Go on.
yeah. So here, like I said this about people wanting to order food from outside. The restaurants open. There were a lot of takeaways happening, but the youngsters were eating. The senior people who were living alone and slightly, how would I say, more, who weren't stepping outside, weren't feeling very safe about bringing home food from outside, places they did not know about so well, not sure. No matter how much you say you're maintaining hygiene, going from a home is a different, it gives you a different sense of, what would I say, feeling of comfort.
Yeah, I'll give you an example, Kashmiri. So in the beginning of the pandemic, there were a few five-star hotels in Calcutta which had started and had ordered food from there because you at least feel that these are known things. Then recently
Yes.
during Durga Puja, my mom's a um, very conscious eater because she's very health conscious and so on. And she wanted to eat Chinese food one day during Durga Puja. You know how it is, no, with us Bengalis
Yes.
and Chinese food. Now, my recent experiences over the last 2 3 years in Calcutta and Chinese food has not been very good. Like whenever I've gone to the popular traditional old places, I've always had heartburn and acidity, and only in the Chinese places. So then I thought, and you probably know of Doma Wang in Kolkata,
I
and
read your post.
and she runs Blue Poppy by Thakali, and so it's a small restaurant, but it's run by mother daughter. So and I've eaten there, and there it's always been comfort food, no acidity, no whatever hard one. So I told her, and her daughter cooked the food in the restaurant and sent it to her mom, and mom was so happy. She said that, did you tell them less oil? I said no, and I knew I didn't have to because I knew that Doma would take care of it. So that is so true.
Reassuring.
Yes,
right?
yes, yes, yes.
It's a
That I
very
could get her a good
reassuring.
meal. That I
Yes,
could get her a
I've
good
had,
meal.
I have had people who call me up and said, "We're not even telling you what to send. We know what
Yes,
to send it.
yes.
We just leave it that this is what they eat or they don't eat." So they would just give me that they're vegetarian or non-vegetarian, and they leave it to me. And that kind, when people repose that kind of faith in you, you take extra caution.
Yes,
It's as if
yes,
you are cooking for your own mom and dad or your own family. I've had people who wanted birthdays, they're saying, I'm staying outside, but my entire family is back home and it's their birthday. I want it to be a grand celebration. So I have done grand food as well along with it. The
and Durga
entire
Puja food also.
Durga Puja, yeah, Durga Puja, I also landed up doing for Navratri because somebody wanted Navratri thalis. So I landed
All the
up doing
Marwaris, all the Marwaris
Leela,
in.
I mean, you wouldn't believe. So I would send my staff looking for kuttuka atta and things. But then I made sure I would bake it. I would not let them touch because they would say, "Okay, we also put this thali for as bhog."
To
So,
the
but then
gods.
the
Yes,
blessings that I have received, I think that is. I mean, I'm more than I can ever ask for. And so I keep telling, even in the pandemic, we have something, people who are working with food have something to look forward instead of going all depressed and sad.
yes. Kashmir, I really liked something which you said towards the beginning that, you said that you're not a doctor, engineer, government official, whatever. And then how can you make a difference to society at large? Or, I mean, how much financial thing can one do? And once I'd spoken to someone and I said that, if you're not in the UN or you're not a government, how can you make a change to society? But you can make a change in people's lives by just doing what you do. And food is such a central thing. How do people reach you to place orders? How what is the best way
No,
to
through
reach you? Through the
social
blog?
media. It's
So what are your
I
platforms? If you
no
can just
through
tell it,
social media.
yeah. Can you just tell your platforms here for people watching? Your
I
handles
am you. I'm there on Instagram. I'm there on
as
Instagram and Facebook as Kashmiri Nath. So everybody comes there. Then we decided that we need to have KN orders. That is where we do all the orders. So we
KN
do.
orders.
Yes. So what happened was that I do a lot of these cakes. Kalyan, you probably would cakes which are cakes, not a lot of cream, and how we
Oh
would have
yeah,
a
just
cake.
what you love. Yes, dark chocolate cakes.
Just
My
a
wife
cake
just
with
passed by. If she heard you, she would say, "Okay, let's go to Guwahati right now," because she loves simple dark chocolate cakes.
yes, just honest cakes and no drama, no nothing. So I started doing a lot of that. In fact, even for birthdays, for celebration, now I just do cakes which are like simple cakes with probably just a slathering of either chocolate or cream, but everything is like real. I said, if you're eating food, let's not hoodwink ourselves trying to say we'll have a small slice of cake, but let's have a piece of butter cake, which actually tastes good and is more satisfying than having a whole. I don't know. I mean, you people will probably. I'm not even going into that side of it,
No,
but
no. I mean, there are people who like it. So I must
yes,
say something here that in Foodocracy for her earlier we have spoken with Pooja Dhingra from La 15 in Mumbai, and then after that Anurita Ghoshal who runs Eighth by Anurita, the big this thing, and we were discussing that how if you're in the pastry or the cake business, you're in a business which directly brings joy to people, and both of them incidentally I mean, both the products at La 15 or the sort of cakes which Amrita does is all about like simple, pure, basic pleasures and not
yes,
bells and whistles.
yes.
Kashmir, I want to now take the conversation a bit back before the pandemic when you started working with hotels and doing Assamese food and so on, because there would be learnings for people, because as things change then and we get back to the older world, there will be people trying to muster courage to step out to a larger stage. So what were the learnings which you had when working with hotels? What are the obstacles you faced? How did you overcome them? Because for you, because you're not really from the hospitality industry, are you?
No, no. I am not. I think it's just this pure love for food that took me to wherever
Who,
I
whom
have
did
gone.
whom did you learn your cooking from? Is there any one person or like multiple
Um,
influences?
I think my dad was my biggest influence. He didn't
Wow.
cook, but he was my biggest influence because he knew the ingredients, and
Wow.
his innate love for nature. And when I was young, I still remember he would tell me, and my mom would get so upset. She would say, like, how can you take your girl to the market? She would be absolutely aghast with it. You can't take your daughter to the market because
Yes.
she would say, Bajar le swali na jaye. That is what she would tell. But my
What does that
father would
mean? What does that
means
mean?
you don't take girls to the market. It was
The
not a
traditional.
place for, yeah. So my dad would just wink at me, and like if I'm studying or something, and then he would say,
How
come,
sweet.
let's go. So I would get into the car along with him and disappear, and we would go gallivanting into those marketplaces, and that love remained with me even now. When I go past and I'm just driving down and I see those bazaars on the roadside, those
The
heaps of
hearts.
vegetables, yeah, I have to stop. It doesn't matter whether I need it or I don't. I can, I get, I mean, it puts me in a different mood and high altogether. So I think he was, and my grandmother, my dad's mother, was, I would only hear the stories because she passed away when I was quite young. But my father would
Sorry,
tell
sorry.
about her.
When you were, I missed that.
Quite
She
young. I
quite
was
young.
quite young when my grandmother passed away. I was probably 5, 6 years old when she passed
And
away.
and
So I
and
don't.
Kashmir, what do you call paternal grandmother in Assamese? Like in Bengali, we say
Aita.
ঠাকুমা.
We call Aita.
Aita, Aita.
Aita. So, you know, I don't know, somehow I was so influenced by her because my dad would constantly say that I am a replica of her in every
Wow,
way. Okay,
wow.
when she says that, in fact, when I was born, they said, ki, oh, she's exact like Aita. So I was very influenced by her for some reason in my subconscious because they would always tell, and they would talk about her that nobody ever came home and went out, left home without a meal at her place. And food never ran out of her place. She always had food to give anybody and everybody. And she ran a large home, big household, and a lot of, because my grandfather was the gambura of 7 villages, so obviously there was a lot of cooking and thing happening that nobody ever. So I was kind of very influenced by that. And later, obviously, when my trips to the villages were obviously hugely influential and had huge effect on me, or when as I was growing up, you know and my dad would keep narrating these stories and I would keep imbibing. And then later what I would do is I'd ask my cousins who are much older than me. I said, what would Aita do, how would she cook?
Wow.
And they would have the recipes. So that I cook this fish with black sesame seed. That is my
Yes.
grandmother's recipe because I asked, and no bihu in our home would be without that till, fish with till,
Interesting.
because that is my grandmother would make, and my father ensured that that was on the table.
Any particular
So,
fish? Any particular fish preferred for this?
koi, kaoi.
Koi mach, koi mach. Okay. So koi mach is something which even in Bengal the grandmoms is associated with the grandmom.
Yes.
Yes.
So it's little bony on the sides and it's
Yes.
tricky to eat. But then you looked for the big ones, and it's like the prized ones are. You would tell. My dad would say we got big ones this time. So we would, and so we had huge ponds and fields, and so all the produce was very readily available. So my dad had this whole thing about huge quantities and large quantities. My grandfather, I remember bihus, my grandfather would never order like yogurt and dahi and all, would never be ordered in kilos. It is always means 40 kgs.
Wow.
Yeah, because that is how it would be. And they would, and
And that's had with
he,
the doi chira and all of that, is it?
yes.
Yes.
So doi, sira, and kumal saul, everything. And I remember one time there was this big. I mean, we had a feast kind of a thing in during Bihu. So a row of those chulas were dug up onto the thing. Huge ones. Probably the kadhais were so big that if I went near, I would probably, fit into them. I was so small. But that is the scale that was things were done. Things were done in large scale, generous, lot of food. Everybody ate. So that came, and inadvertently, you imbibe all these into your, and you have, somehow I feel very connected. And then now if I get this opportunity to take the food outside, and when you ask me what are the challenges, I
Yeah,
don't come from.
sorry. Before that, I just want to say when you said that the chula or the oven was so big you could get into it, it reminded me of Amritsar when Chef Vikas Khanna took us to the Lawrence Road Kulcha Chola place, where he said that when he was a kid, he would go there and they would measure his height by making him stand beside the chula in which the kulcha was made. So every year to see how. But so from this, this almost paradise idyllic world of your grandmom, of your dad, of the Bihu, the spring festival, to the cold, mechanical, process driven, 5-star environment. How was the transition?
Uh, it was, of course, challenging because when you don't come from the hospitality industry, there are certain learnings that you miss out. How to maintain kitchen. There are entire SOPs that have to be done.
Yes.
But fortunately, I have had very, very good mentors all along. Whether it is Chef Ashish Pasi, Chef Anirban Das Gupta, or Chef Yogender Pal, they have been like great. They literally held my hand. I've had melting moments when I, I, I'm like I said, I don't think I can produce anything to be served people and something. But then you learn along the way. You learn and you step up. They help you as well. And working in commercial kitchen is not like cooking in the house because it's taxing. It is you're working with time. There is everything is time bound. You learn how to lay out 20 thalis and each thali having hot food. It's
Yes.
not an easy task. It's not an
Tell me
easy.
about it. Tell me about it. So during the lockdown, my wife Kanaz is now working from home, and that's a lovely thing. So earlier she would never have breakfast. So and for me breakfast is very important. So towards the beginning of the lockdown, once I gave her a little bite from what I was eating, and she ate it like normally she wouldn't. So then I started making breakfast for her. So you know, if I'm making fried eggs or scrambled eggs or toast, to get 2 portions hot, give it to her when she might be on a Zoom call. I need to click my picture from Instagram because uske bina
Yes.
like food hazam nahi hota hai mujhe and get my coffee ready and still get it hot is so tough. And I had to get it, for 20 people, so many dishes and hot and from a kitchen going to the distance. The customers, I can imagine I would go crazy. That's why I'm happy writing about food than even thinking of being a chef.
Oh, it was, the first time I went, when they throw the pan, my heart literally jumped out of my body. It was like that. But that is the kind of pace and the energy behind the scene. In
Wow.
front, it's all very calm, but inside,
Yes,
it's
yes, yes.
very high energy. So unless you get used to it, it can be a little unnerving and scary, and you can lose your bearings. But you get it. Now I think I have become quite good, as good, if not as good as them, but still better than what I was. I can handle all that pressure, and I'm cool with it. So I take it. I think that has been my biggest learning process. And of course, the hotels also have their own sets of rules. You can't do this and you can't use that. So you have to
Yeah.
step up and see what works best for you. It's all adapting, and you can't get, how do I say? I can't say that I will only use fish with bones in it
Yes.
because
Yes.
masar tenga is very tasty with raw mas. They would say, no, ma'am, we are not allowed fish on the bone. So I have to
Yeah.
compromise.
And the when I had the Masur Tenga at Ahomi at Bangalore, it was of a very small rohu, not the
Huh.
maybe like a kilo size or smaller. And even someone like me, a Bengali, I was not comfortable with. So I think I left most of that fish and just enjoyed the sauce. So you're right. Now tell me, in those times when you had those melting moments and probably wanted to give up, what kept you going? What did you tell yourself? What kept you going? That you've not
I
given up.
always, I would always tell myself, Kalyan, you would believe. In fact, the sous chef and all, they ask me, itna mehnat kyu karte ho? They tell me that, why do you come at morning 7:30? It's like that, I'm there in the kitchen at 7:30. I said, nay, I keep telling them, I said, people who are going to eat don't know my food. I know my food. And in a sense, I'm representing my state, my entire, I can't go wrong. I would keep saying, this is like, I'm bringing Assam on a plate and I can't go wrong. I can't mislead. They said, kuch nahi pata lagega. I said, kabhi nahi. I have to be true to myself and the food I cook. I have to be very honest with it. So
So
I yes.
yeah, I loved what you said because this morning just before I started talking with you, I made some fried eggs, one fried egg for breakfast, and it reminded me of the time when I started working from home as a food writer. And I would go to this local cafe called Candies, and I'd have fried eggs and toast, and on Mondays to Smokehouse Delhi because Candies was shut. I'm not talking of fried eggs here. I think the point was that when I took the break from my corporate market research career and moved into food writing, for the first 6 months, I was almost in a state of shock because there was no work. And more importantly, I didn't know what to do. So I was getting increasingly withdrawn, anxiety, depression, all of that. Then, often it comes to philosophy. So I was going to the yoga institute, then I took up Buddhism. And over there, one learned the importance of having purpose. So as I thought a lot about it, I felt that my writing is a lot about writing about people from different cultures. So let me be someone who through my writing helps you get to know about a culture different from yours and thereby connect you. So your purpose, and that's so the fantastic, was to, I am here as the ambassador of Assam, and which will make me
All
get up at 7:30 and not take shortcuts, and which when I went to BKC to eat, and I remember I went around 2 o'clock or something like that, there was not a single wrong note. And when I went to Guwahati myself and to Manas maybe a year later, the food I ate at your place almost created the foundation of what I went and experienced over there.
lost you a bit.
No, no, you're back. We are back.
Yes,
We are back.
yes, yes,
Kashmiri,
true.
I want to ask you
Yes.
one. I want to ask you one question, sort of before we start wrapping up. Okay, Kashmiri, I had one question to ask you. I'm someone who increasingly realized that no experience in life goes wasted. So you had this grounding uh, in the last couple of years from no hospitality industry background to working with hotels with some of the chefs you mentioned who've been lovely mentors, and now you've set up your own home chef enterprise from home, which is a completely different context scenario. Are there any learnings from that stage which have been of use during this lockdown for you in this enterprise?
Yes, I think that another thing that I always learned while I worked back in the back end of the kitchen was that the dedication that I see with the staff working in the kitchen is not an easy task, and they do that day in and day out. I have so much respect for all of them, and I would keep telling myself, if at any point while I was in the lockdown, we all were understaffed and we had less people, and we were coping up with not only physical activity but also a lot of emotional, uh, we were all traumatized during
Yes,
this
of
period. We
course, of
still
course.
are. So you
Yes,
would, but then I would think about those people so often, and it's all right. I have great exi chefs, but I also had people who were in the team who did not belong. I mean, who are not. How would I say? They came from a different strata altogether, but day in and day out, the way they work out, the way they would put out food on the table, not missing a day. I was that was my biggest takeaway from them, because being in the kitchen, it's all very nice to go. You know how it is
when the
in a
chef
five
comes
star.
out and yeah,
But the workers who are doing, the chefs, the commis, for them it's a tough life. And especially those rush hours, I literally see them, they forget themselves. And how do they eat? They sit somewhere there, they would make themselves a roti. And I would tell them, I said, Bhaiya, aap log itne logo ko chef khilate ho, and this is how you eat. They would laugh and they'll say, Chef, aap bhi aa jao types. Their spirit was always so positive. that is one thing. And they're not the best celebrated people. Nobody knows about them, literally.
Yes, yes,
Nobody
yes.
knows about them, and they are the ones who keep everything going. So for me, I mean, they are actual heroes, you know.
I just love what you said right now, because you know that there are always extremes when it comes to food media and food writing, and right now the flavor of the moment, and I've got nothing against it. I'm in favor of it. Is a lot about home chefs and home cooks. So to first of all, there's one thing which it says that there are the chefs who are absolutely fabulous, and which they are, but it is almost at the cost of saying that everyone else who are the professional chefs are nothing. So that is one point. The second, what you and which is you showed that, and that's not true. I mean, there's the value which the professionals bring in. And the second point you said, I was talking earlier about taking on Buddhism, and one of the things which they keep talking about there is that always acknowledge what people are doing behind the scenes, because you will never get to see their work. And what you told me about the commies and the picture you drew of a kitchen, I had never known, because I would sit at the table and the chef would come, and maybe the PR person and the person in the service, maybe the consulting chef, and we'd sit and we'd talk about nice things, we'd shoot videos, photos, and go away. But inside that, there's a chaos going, which has brought all this to you. I think it's so fabulous that you acknowledge that, and you've taken inspiration from that during this period.
Absolutely, absolutely, absolutely. So I feel there is learning from both ways. You learn from them. I mean, you're sharing whatever little you know. They see you in a different light as well. But for me, this has been my biggest, Kalyan, we can probably go on talking. It'll be never ending. For me, food has literally saved my life in every way. It has been the cornerstone or the place where I come to whenever I'm upset, whenever my life has taken or gone out of control. What do? I come back to my cooking, and that centers me. And that little joy that I get, I want to give that joy or spread the joy as much as possible. So this is what my learning, or it has been like this.
I just love what you said, and food has saved my life, because that has been my experience. Also, I would say that, of course, philosophy and Buddhism, but it's food which gave shape to my dreams and aspirations, and we got to talk to each other. But there's something I want to send to all those who are viewing. If you remember in the beginning, what Kashmiri was speaking about, the food of the Northeast and of Assam. So it's a lot about what are the trends today, like clean eating, natural food,
Gluten
not
free.
and gluten free, and herbs and fresh produce, and less oil, less spices, less masala. So we think of this when we look at European cooking or Far Eastern cooking, but it's there in our backyard, and not just in Northeast. Like I found a bit of similarity when I had home cooked meals in Guwahati with what my grandmother, who's a Bengali, who's born in Dhaka, she cooks. And if you see food across India, and the way our home cooked food was, it was about all these values of simplicity. So once things open up, please make an effort to reach out and to go to Assam, to go to the Seven Sisters, and get to know more about a part of our country, and people who are in Guwahati, or who have relatives, or elders in Guwahati, and you want them to have a good meal. Reach out to Kashmiri Nath on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, on our blog, and K and Company, which is not Kalyan in
Cane
this case.
orders. Kalyan,
K
it's
and
cane
K
orders.
K orders
Yes.
will be there with some lovely food sucker to you. So thank you, Kashmiri. It was so nice,
Thank,
and you
thank
did
you.
what anyone from Assam does. I think you lit up the screen with your smile. So
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I must also say I follow your mom, not only you, Miss. Ma'am. I follow her. I read all her posts because she's another very inspiring lady. And
yes,
I
I
love
will
the way
tell her.
she brings her stories onto the food and shares with the world. So
Yes, I will tell her, because it's been very hard for her. But I
yes,
think she gets a lot of inspiration when people say this to her. So thank you so much. I'm going to
thank you
sign off
so
now,
much.
and
Thank you.
stay safe, stay well, and
Thank
let's
you.
keep celebrating food the way we are.
Food, yes, yes.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. Yes.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye bye.